All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the settings and take a look at what's involved in that. If I click on settings or just mouse over it, you're going to see that I have a couple different options here under the flyout that happens. And if I just click on settings, I'll go to general by default, but I can always access all of these. So I'll just click on settings. And you can see again, I'm under general by default. So when we first registered the site, you saw that I had typed in a site title, which is what this is up here. And then it gives me the option to add a subtitle or a tagline. Depends on how you want to look at it. Now, depending on the theme that you're using, it may or may not show this tagline, but you can always just type it in there. The next options you have are the WordPress address and the site address. Do not touch these. Unless you know what you're doing and you know there's a reason to edit this, do not touch this. If you wanted to add an SSL, to add some kind of encryption to your website, this is where you would go to maybe add the S within up here. But you mess with anything up here and it'll shut your website down, and you'll need to have database access to be able to fix it. So definitely stay away from that. This is the main administrator's email address. Don't really worry too much about that. The membership, anyone can register. You really don't want anybody just registering for your website unless you are maybe selling items and you want those store items to be something where somebody can register as a user so that they can retain their information. So when they come back, they can have all that shipping information already stored in the site. We'll take a look at users and where they get stored later on, but for the most part, you really don't want to allow just anybody to register for the website. So I just keep that turned off. WordPress keeps that off by default. If you do have them register, you can set what their role is by default. And we'll talk about roles as we get into users as well. But you can say as a subscriber, they're basically just allowed access to the website, not like all this back-end stuff that you're seeing. That's all administrator. But their information is then stored under users so they can be retained and used later on. So, but let's say you wanted to have a team of people. Maybe you wanted to have somebody who's just an author, maybe just someone who's just an editor or a contributor, whatever. You can give them these different roles, and it's going to give them different access to the website. Again, they may see different parts of the left-hand menu up here. Unless you're an administrator, you're not going to see plugins and appearance and different things where they can edit the site. They're pretty much going to be limited to like posts and pages and media, things like that that they can go in and edit. One important thing to change is your time zone. I like to try to find what that is because that does affect the time stamping on your blog post. Or maybe let's say you're going to have a blog post that's set to go live at a certain date and time. You want to make sure that time zone is correct if you want it to post at the right time. Now, whether or not you know your UTC number doesn't really matter. I just like to type in my city, or at least the city that's nearest to me within my state. So I'll say Detroit. And that says my time zone automatically. Now, again, I talked about the blog format where they have the timestamp on it. I can show how that displays. I can choose if I wanted to do like, the month, the day, the year, or the day, the month, the year, or have it be spelled out, or just come up with some kind of custom layout. Same thing with the time. Do I want it to be lowercase PM, uppercase PM, or do I want it to be like military time? Also, the day of the week that it starts on, I can set right here. That, again, is just kind of for blog posting, not something I really mess with too much. But for the most part, I keep all this stuff default. I just maybe change the time zone that I'm in and maybe the tagline up here. So I'll hit save. And let's go take a look at writing over here. So I've got a bunch of different categories. I went in and just edited just to kind of fill this up. By default, you're going to see uncategorized as being your main default category. These are the categories that get put into your post as you create them. So let's say I had a news website and I had a sports section, a business section, a lifestyle section. I could then decide what category those blog posts went into. And by default, maybe if I just added a new article and didn't select a category, WordPress would choose one for me by default, and that's what I would set right here. Not much you really have to do. I really don't edit this too much. Posting via email, you can actually just email a article and it would go into the website. I've never really used that. I don't know anybody who does. If it's something you wanted to, this training video is not going to show you how to do that. It's a little bit more time intensive and it's very specific to your server's information, so I really don't want to get into that one right now. But let's take a look at reading. So here's where we can say, okay, what type of website do I have? These are all things that you want to think about before we go too far with all this stuff. That's why I'm starting with settings here. Do I want my website to be primarily a blog? So when people come to the home page, they see all the different blog articles I've written, Or do I want this to be more of a business page where I've got my home page, which has information, the about page, the contact page, and then blogging is kind of like a very secondary thing on the website. So if that was the case, I would say my home page is going to be a static page, and this will be the home page, and this will be where my blog posts are. For this case, I'm going to say my home page is going to be my latest blog post, so I can keep that the way it is right now. Now, this just depends on how you want to lay out your website. You can always come back and change this stuff later, but again, just stuff you want to think about before going too far. We can also say how many blog posts per page I see, and if I have maybe 20 blog posts, you'll see a little read more or like a number button at the bottom of the page after I see 10 posts to say to see more posts, you would see that. So I can kind of adjust that right here. Now, I did allude to when we first registered the site or set it all up, the very last option when we set our title and our username and password, the very last option looked exactly like this, right? A little checkbox, and it said discourage search engines from indexing this site. That basically tells the search engines when they come to your website, Google, Yahoo, Bing, to, you know what? I don't want you to index me right now. I don't want you to look at what I'm doing. Just go away. I'll tell you to come back some other time. That's what that checkbox is doing. It says, don't even come here. Don't look at my website. This is important if you have, maybe you're rebuilding this website for somebody else and it's an existing site. You may want to have that just turn off right now, or you just want to hide information from Google. The problem with checking that is that I usually forget to uncheck it. So if a website goes live and I realized after a month or two that, man, I'm getting no traffic, nobody's coming here, Google's not indexing me, whatever the case is. This is why, because maybe I had this checked. So unless you really need to, I wouldn't check it. But if you do want to hide the information, if this is duplicate information by, duplicating this blog and working on it on the side, you may want to check that. If you did check that initially, this is where you'd come back to uncheck it. Discussion. This is very important because this is how people comment on your website. For the most part, you can keep most of these options the way they are. You can notify me when there's a new blog link, or notify me anytime a post or a comment is made to a post, or their post is held for moderation. Those are all good to know because you want to know when somebody leaves a comment. The problem is there's a lot of spam comments out there, so you want to kind of turn some of this off. Now, you don't have to necessarily just like not have commenting, but I would definitely at least say check on this. Comment must be manually approved before it goes live. I don't want just anybody being able to post something and for it to go live to the world to see, because it could be something negative or derogatory or just spam or hateful. It could be even code injections that hackers could use. So I always want to say that I want to be able to take a look at that comment before it goes live. And we're going to see all that stuff here in a little bit. Now, we could also say, like, what kind of words would put a blog post into moderation. So I could type in a bunch of bad words in here or whatever I want to say, anytime you see this, just go ahead and hold on to that blog post or that comment. I can also blacklist people by their IP address or their email address. So if they're coming back, they're always doing bad stuff, I can just go ahead and blacklist them right here. We can also show avatars or gravatars or different types of ID characters when people do post, kind of what they show up as. So those are kind of fun, but I really don't tweak those out too much. Media. When you upload media, how does it show? These are just the default sizes for like small, medium, and large images. I really don't mess with that too much. I'll show you where that does become important later on, but just know that it's here, that you can always tweak it out for. Permalinks, that's the last big one here. By default, WordPress sets it to day and name. So let's say when I go to the website and I go see onlinemarketingconcepts.com, and then I go to a web page, it's going to show the actual date, time, and year, month, and day, and then the name of the post. That's all just excessive to me. I really don't need people to know or have in this URL up here what they're seeing. A lot of times you will see blogs with this, what they call like an ugly URL, where it's just the database information, where it's like, some database info and like the page ID. That's not real good. For good SEO, 9 times out of 10, I'll choose post name only. So like right here. So I'll see the website URL or domain name, and then the full URL is the name of that page or that post. That's so nice and clean that the search engines are immediately able to tell what that article or that page is about and index me properly. But feel free to use any of these. There's really no wrong answer, but this is probably best for SEO. Privacy is kind of a new one in WordPress where they will let you link to a privacy policy page. This is good to have. Really nothing you have to do here. I haven't never really tweaked this out. If you wanted to create your own privacy policy page, you could do that here. But that's the majority of all your settings. The next video, we're going to take a look at posts and start to have some fun here with creating new articles, and we're going to go from there.